Hey Peppermint Patty group. So we're back for our second guided reading lesson, and I hope that you guys really liked reading the book about Gilbert the Pig last week. I thought it was kind of a silly and fun story. This week we're going to read a new book. It's called Math Tricks. But before we talk about that book, we are actually going to do a different word work activity. So last week we did making words, and this week we're going to do what's called an analogy chart. And we'll take a look at what that's going to look like, and I'll explain it in just a minute. But after we do the analogy chart, then we're going to read our book, Math Tricks, and we're going to really think about the main character in the story. And we're going to think about how we can describe that main character, because it's going to help us really understand the story a lot better. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's get started with our analogy chart activity. So this is really going to help us remember two different vowel teams. So what I want you to do is I want you to write this chart on a piece of paper, a board. You can use whatever you want, but just find something to write with, and go ahead and make this chart. So make the T chart, and then write those two words right where you see them at the top. And then once you do that, then you can come back and we'll get started. So press pause, go do that, come back, press play, and we'll get started with our analogy chart. All right, guys, so let's get started with our analogy chart activity. So we're gonna practice two vowel teams. Now, when I say a vowel team, that just means two vowels that are put together kind of like a team, and they make a new sound. So the first one that we're gonna practice is the E vowel team. So what I want you to do is I want you to actually underline, just like I did in the word see, I want you to underline that E. And we're working with this same vowel pattern that we did last week in our making words activity. So remember, if you remember from last week, the E makes that E sound, the double E. So if we do our phonics dance hunk and chunk, little dance, it would go like this. It would go, when you see double E, say E, it's a bumblebee party. And then you would say that again. So if you want to, you can always go back to our virtual classroom and click on that hunks and chunks poster, and it'll take you to our phonics dance hunks and chunks, and you can practice those, including this one. And then our other hunk and chunk that we're gonna practice, our vowel team, is the OA hunk and chunk. So I want you to underline the OA in boat, because we're gonna practice both of those, E and OA. And OA is a really fun little hunk and chunk phonics dance to do. It goes like this. We go, O says to A, oh, I love you. And A says, absolutely nothing. So when you see OA, say O. And we go like this because we know that's the long and strong O sound, which is what OA makes. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give you some words, and you're gonna do your best to figure out, where do you think that's gonna go? Which vowel pattern do you hear in that word, okay? All right, so let's start with the word free. Free, so everybody say free. Good, I know I can't hear you, but I'm trusting you that you're saying it. So like if I said, the couch was free to me, everybody say free. Good, so what sound do you hear in the word free? Do we hear the E sound or the O sound? Good, we hear the E sound. So we're gonna write free underneath the word see, because it has that same hunk and chunk. And then if I stretch it out, listen, fur. I hear that FR sound at the beginning, that blend. And then I hear my hunk and chunk. And I'm gonna make sure to underline my E hunk and chunk right there, so I can make sure I remember that I say that E sound. Very good. All right, next word is road. Road, like the road was really bumpy. Road, everybody say road. Very good. All right, so think about it. What do you hear in the word road? Do you hear E, or O? Road. I hope you said the OA sound. Very good. So we're going to put it right here under the word boat. So I'm going to stretch it out. And then I hear that O, that OA hunk and chunk. And then I hear road, that D at the end. And then I am not going to forget to underline that hunk and chunk. That's really important so we can see that in our word. All right, next word is boast. boast. Like, boast means like if I brag about something. So like if I had a whole lot of toys, I might boast about it. I'm going to brag that I have a lot of toys. So everybody say boast. Good. So what do you hear? Do you hear the E-E, hunk and chunk, that E sound, or do you hear the O-A-O sound? Boast. Very good. You should have said the O-A-O sound. So if I stretch it out, I hear B. I hear that B sound at the beginning, and then I hear boast. I hear that hunk and chunk. You're right. I hope you said that. Boast. And then I hear two letters at the end that I blend together. Boast. I hear that S-T. Very good. And then I'm going to make sure that I underline that O-A. So make sure you're doing all of this with me. I want this on your paper too, okay? All right, next word is leech. Leech. Like a leech is a kind of bug that'll stick to you. So everybody say leech. Good. So what do you hear in the middle of the word leech? Do you hear the E sound or the O sound? Leech. Very good. We hear that E sound. So I'm going to stretch it out and put it underneath my word see because it has that same hunk and chunk in it. So if I stretch it out, I hear L-E. I hear that hunk and chunk. And then I hear another hunk and chunk at the end that we practiced a couple of weeks ago. L-E-ch-ch-ch. That C-H hunk and chunk. Hopefully you remember that. If not, then take a good look because we want to remember that that CH makes that ch-ch sound. And then I'm going to underline that E-E so I remember that it makes that E sound. Very good. All right, next word is sleep. Sleep. So everybody say sleep. Like I went to sleep really early last night. Sleep, which by the way was true. All right, so let's think. What sound do we hear in the middle of the word sleep? Do we hear the E-E-E sound or the O-A-O sound? Very good. We hear the E sound. So we're going to put that on this side because it has that same hunk and chunk. So I'm going to stretch it out. And I hear, let's see, I hear a blend at the beginning. So I'm going to blend two letters together. I hear sl, sl. So I hear that S-L, sl. And then I hear my hunk and chunk. E, sl, eep. And then I hear that P at the end. And then I'm going to underline that E-E because it's really important that I see where that hunk and chunk is. Very good. All right, so make sure you're caught up. Make sure you have this on your paper or your notebook or board, whatever you're writing on. All right, last word. Last word is throat. Throat. So think about it. Do you hear the E-E-E sound or the O-A-O sound? Throat. Like my throat was really red from coughing. Throat. Good. We hear the O-A-O sound. So, now this one's going to be a little bit trickier because I'm really going to have to stretch out that word. So I hear at the beginning, I hear a hunk and chunk. I hear the sound. And we learned that last week, and we know that is T-H. But I also hear another letter before I get to my hunk and chunk. I hear another letter before that. Listen again. Thrrr. We hear the R sound. Very good. And then I hear my O-A hunk and chunk. So thrrr, O. And then what do I hear at the end? Throat. I hear my T. Very good. I'm going to make sure I underline that O-A so I can see it in my word. And I know it's going to make that O sound. Very good. So let's go back over one more time. What sound does that E-E make? When you see double E, say E-E. It's a bumblebee party. Makes that E sound. And then O-A makes what sound? O. Very, very good. Just remember that long and strong O makes that O-A makes that sound, okay? You guys did a great job with this, so let's move on to the next part. All right, so now is the time for you to take a break because I know sometimes our lessons can be a little bit longer with our guided reading. So if you need to go get something to drink, if you need to go grab a snack, if you need to go to the bathroom, or if you just need to get up and stretch and kind of move around a little bit, now is a perfect time to do that. So you can press pause, and then whenever you're ready, you can come back and press play, and then we'll get started with our book. Okay, so don't forget that we talked about this strategy last week, right? We talked about Skippy Frog, and we're going to learn a new strategy this week, but I wanted to make sure that I mentioned and had you remember our strategy from last week, because it's really, really important if you get stuck on a word that you have a lot of different things that you can do to help you figure out that word on your own. Because remember, Miss Bell does not want you to look to a grown-up to tell you the word. I want you to use the strategies to figure out the word on your own. And so Miss Bell's going to give you lots of good things that you can do to do that, and this is one of them. So if you get stuck on a word while you're reading, don't forget to use that Skippy Frog strategy where you skip the word, read the rest of the sentence, and then go back and read that sentence again and see if you can figure out what would make sense in that sentence. All right, let's talk about the next one. Okay, so our new strategy that we're going to learn this week is called Chunky Monkey. And you might have heard of this strategy before, and that's okay. If you have, then this will just be a review, but if you haven't, this is a really, really good, important strategy to use if you get stuck on a word. Because Chunky Monkey wants you to look for two things. One, you can look for hunks and chunks that you see in your word, and we're going to learn lots of hunks and chunks this year, but the ones that we've practiced so far are SH, CH, and TH. So if you see any of those hunks and chunks or ones that you already know that maybe we haven't even practiced yet, then make sure you look for those. If you see them, then you'll know what sound that makes in the word, and it'll help you stretch it out. The second thing that Chunky Monkey wants you to look for, so hunks and chunks, and the second thing are words that you know. So if you look in that word and you see a word kind of hiding inside of that word that you already know, well, it's going to help you a whole lot when you go to stretch out that word. So let's practice this in a few pages. I'm going to let you read for a few pages, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in a few times, and one of those times I'm going to show you what that looks like to use the Chunky Monkey strategy. So if you get stuck on a word, don't forget, use the Skippy Frog strategy that we practiced last week. But then we're also going to learn this new strategy that you can use where you can look for hunks and chunks and words that you know hiding inside of that word. And don't forget, if I'm moving too fast and the pages are moving too fast, you can always pause it and then press play when you're ready to go to the next page. So our book this week is called Math Tricks. And just like last week we had a character that was an animal, well, we're going to have another character that's an animal. And he's a squirrel, and his name is Tidbit. And Tidbit, he kind of decides to trick a couple of people in his family, including his brother, Morsel. And so we're going to see what happens and how Tidbit ends up tricking his brother and his dad at the end of the story. But here's what I really want you to do when you're reading the book. I'm gonna pop in and we're gonna talk about some things, but throughout the whole book, I really want you to be thinking about Tidbit, the character. And I want you to be thinking about how would you describe Tidbit. So not only how would you describe him on the outside, so the fact that he is a squirrel and he has brown fur and he has brown eyes, those are all really good things to describe a character. But I also want you to think about how would you describe him on the inside. So what does he think? How does he feel? What does he say? What does he do? What are some things that we can learn about Tidbit and how he is as a person, or not a person, but a squirrel? And how would you describe him? And so we call those things character traits. You have traits as a human being. There are things about you that make you you, and those are traits that you have. And characters in a book have traits too. So while you're reading, be thinking about what are some character traits about Tidbit the squirrel. How would you describe him on the outside, what he looks like, but also on the inside with what he says and what he does and how he feels, okay? Because when we get done, then you're going to tell me a little bit more about Tidbit the squirrel and his character traits. Okay, so do you know what this is? It's a table of contents, which is a really important text feature that we are going to learn a lot about in first grade. We're going to learn about a lot of different text features that you'll see in nonfiction or informational books. But usually, even though we see them usually in nonfiction books, sometimes you'll see them in fiction books kind of as a place to put the different chapters, like in this book. So, very good if you remembered what that was called. But we'll talk more about text features and table of contents later on this year. Okay, so before we started reading the book, we talked about the chunky monkey strategy. And so I'm going to pretend to get stuck on a word here on page 6, right around here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I'm going to use that chunky monkey strategy to help me figure out that word that I get stuck on, okay? All right, so let's look at it. Tidbit. I don't think I know that word. Okay, let me use Skippy Frog and then I'll come back and look at it and use Chunky Monkey. Forgot how clever his mother was about numbers. Okay, let me go back. Tidbit. Now wait a second. I see the word some and I see the word times. So maybe I just need to put them together and see what the word is. So let's see. Sometimes. Sometimes. Okay, so let me see if that makes sense. Tidbit sometimes forgot how clever his mother was about numbers. Does that make sense? Yeah, and does it look like the word sometimes? Yeah, so I used both of my strategies, Skippy Frog and Chunky Monkey, to help me figure it out all on my own. So if you get stuck on a word, I want you to make sure that you use both of those strategies to help you. So one thing that really strong readers do is they read with really good expression. So that means I don't want to read like a robot. Because if I read like that, it's going to be really boring, not only to myself, but if I'm reading to somebody, it's going to be really boring to them. So if I read with expression and I change my voice to make it sound like the character and make it go up and down and make it sound interesting, then it's going to be more interesting to me and it's going to help me understand the story better. So let me show you, on this page, am going to start right around here. And I'm going to read this page, just that little part, with really good expression. So I'm going to change my voice to make it sound like I think Morsel would sound in the book. I'm going to make it sound like I think he would sound. So I want you to listen, because then what I want you to do is I'm going to have you pause it and I want you to practice reading that part just like I did and practice reading it with expression. So listen really carefully. Let me show you what that might sound like. So remember, I'm going to start down towards the bottom. No way, said Morsel. I've been working for months to collect acorns, so I'll have something to eat in the winter. 20 acorns is a lot. So, do you see how I didn't sound like a robot and I made my voice sound like I think Morsel would have said it? So now I want you to press pause and I want you to see if you can change your voice to make it sound like you think Morsel would sound, even if it sounds different than how I did it. Go ahead and practice that. So I hope you liked our story, Math Tricks, because now what you're going to do, and hopefully you got a chance as you were reading to think about the character Tidbit and how you would describe him on the outside and also on the inside. So different character traits about him. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back to Seesaw and you're going to complete the little worksheet that's attached to the assignment, and you're just going to tell me little things that you can say to describe Tidbit. So what does he look like? What does he say? How does he feel? What does he do? How does he act? So think about all of those things and make sure that when you get finished that you turn it into me. So great job this week on another guided reading group.